Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live, our weekly show on Fridays where we sit here and we talk about the Star Citizen with our developers, usually over Zoom. On the show this week, we have an esteemed panel of vehicle experts from our experience, content, feature, and just overall vehicle teams. Let's meet them now. We've got a vehicle art director this way, Ben Curtis.
Hello.
Hi, Ben. We've got vehicle systems designer Mark Gibson.
Hello.
Did I get that wrong? Probably.
No, that's right. Yep.
First timer, a noob to the Friday show. We've got Chris McCoy, also a vehicle designer, senior vehicle designer, I think. Worked on the Spartan. We've got Yogi Klatt from the vehicle experience team. How you doing, Yogi?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
Yep. And we got receiver of incoherent Tyler Wicked emails, Mr. John Crew. How you doing, John?
Hello. I wondered where you were going with that.
It's one of those mornings already. All right, on the show this week, we are talking about all things spaceships. IAE is winding down. We're at the end of our IAE festivities now. And so as we are wont to do every year, we bring a panel of our vehicle people on the show, and we open the floor to almost any and all vehicle-related questions. Now, I say almost any and all vehicle-related questions because I want to start this off with a brief discussion of what the vehicle teams work on and what they don't work on. So this is a big point of continuing consternation and confusion because the easy answer would be that a vehicle team works on everything that ever goes in a vehicle. That's not the case, though. Many gameplay systems or shopping systems, if you're talking about the Kraken Privateer and stuff like that, are not actually handled by the vehicle team. Those are handled by economy teams and U.S. gameplay teams and stuff like that. So, John, real quick, or actually everybody, let's open this up real quick. What kind of things do the vehicle teams work on versus what kind of things do you often get asked about that you don't actually work
on? I think the number one thing we get asked about a lot is NPC crews and like duty cycles and things like that, because whilst it is quite related to vehicles, like we obviously want to have NPCs in our ships doing things, we, and specifically the vehicle coders, are not the people doing that. We simply go like, we will let someone in this seat have this role, but we don't control hiring an NPC or making them get in the seat and stuff like that. That's other teams. We make it work for a player doing that, and then other teams leverage that to make NPC schedules work around those sort of things. I think that's the biggest one for me, at least.
Okay. Well, what about you, Mark? What do you always get asked about that you're like, that's not actually my team?
The most common one by far is, do you make the art? For vehicle system designers, we don't do anything with art. We assemble everything and get it functional. We follow the ships from the beginning of their life cycle, where we come up with the original brief and follow it all the way through to the actual release. But we work with every team to assemble everyone's work together to get the ship to actually work, function, and out there to the backers as a whole. So for me, it's definitely we don't do the art, but someone else may have a very different answer about the art in the chat.
Ben Curtis.
I guess I'm the opposite of Mark, right? I get asked a lot, why doesn't this work? And I'm like, I don't know. We just make it pretty. So that's probably yeah. A lot of the time is when we get things in, they come through, and we do a bit of a triaging session between us and work out who's responsible for what, because even though it's a game that we're making, it can be quite complicated. So, and even ourselves, we sometimes get bugs and things come in that they need more expertise than I have to work out where they should belong. Yeah, and also I get asked a lot about props still. That's like me personally. Like, why is this prop not working? Like, I don't know. Look after ships now.
Now, Chris and Yogi, let's flip the script here and talk about what you do work on. But the difference is, Chris, you are a vehicle systems designer, and Yogi, you work on the vehicle experience team. How what do you do versus what the other person does? How do you separate those
first?
Um, well, anything we do really in VT has more to do with how the ships feel, how combat plays out, and to some extent a little bit of input stuff. Anything that relates to what happens inside of the ships, like lighting and where sounds go and all that, that's all not related to our work. So we still just focus on anything that can shoot, but only from the outside, basically. I'm not sure if that's a good reply, but it's the one you get.
Chris, what's your answer?
It's pretty. I mean, Yogi's is pretty close. I mean, essentially, any seat that's in a ship, we've probably put it there. Anything that you can walk around and open up and get a drink out of, we've put it there, because Art have put it in the reference, and then we've gone, that looks pretty and needs to actually function. So I'm going to take a seat and I'm going to put that seat there, and hopefully someone will sit down on it and not break it. And then when it breaks it, we fix it.
They bring the magic, basically.
Yes.
Like we make it pretty, and then they like sprinkle some here, make it actually work. And yeah,
I prefer the term ship wizard.
Ship
wizard. Yeah, much better.
This is my very short way of saying that not everybody works on all things in the vehicles. So it's there will be questions that our folks here today are capable or knowledgeable to answer, and there will be some questions that are still yet for other teams. Questions like, we got a lot of questions about the cargo refactor. We won't be talking about the cargo refactor because that's actually on one of the PU feature teams and not on the vehicle teams. As John said, NPC crew is actually a function of our AI teams and stuff like that, and not on the vehicle teams and stuff like that. So as you go through and you watch this highly anticipated show, if you see that certain questions are like, well, why aren't they talking about that or whatever, it's because, as we've attempted to demonstrate here in the last couple of minutes, not everybody works on all things, and not everything that seems related to the life and experience in a spaceship is actually on the spaceship team. So that said, most questions overwhelmingly have to do with, where is this? Can you give me an update on this ship? We had folks asking about the Polaris, the Corsair, the Perseus, the Pegasus, the Apollo, the Merchantman, which we just revealed has finally entered white box phase on yesterday's ISC, the Ranger, the Lynx, a whole bunch of... A lot of the questions came, they wanted updates on this ship or that ship. For all of those questions, those cleverly designed when questions, we're going to point you back to the public roadmap. Basically, all the information we have about how far along a ship is in the pipeline is there on the public roadmap. Generally speaking, if you do not see a ship on the public roadmap, it is not currently in what we refer to as active development. Now, that said, let's talk a little bit about how we schedule these things out and why the schedule ships. We've covered this before, but it's always like a year or two between times we covered this, John. So how do we schedule these ships, and why do the schedules change as much as they do?
Yeah, so it's a surprisingly complicated thing to schedule and manage. Mostly because of the time frames involved. So ships, if we take like a very simplistic ground vehicle, that is probably still 3 to 4 months of development time. And you go to the other end of like a big capital ship, that could be 2+ years of development time. So we sort of have to work back from a known point, which could be a gameplay team says, we're going to work on this feature, which happens to be a key feature of a ship, or a feature that a ship helps further in the game. And they go, we're going to release this in Q2 next year. Can you give us the ship for it? It's like, nope, you should have asked us last year because it's going to take too long to do that. So if we know in advance when those dates are going to be, then we can sort of work backwards and look at our schedule and go, right, this ship will fit in the time, but we don't have the people. We don't have, like, it would take everyone on the team to do it, which means we just release one ship that year, which is not what we want to do. So it's a constant juggling act between wanting to deliver a ship with a specific feature and specific dates and the people we have available. So I think we'd all love to just all work on the big, huge capital ships, but it's finding that balance between getting through some of these larger ships and having a sort of a fairly regular release cycle of putting ships into each of like the 6 big patches that we have each year, because you have the 4 quarterlies and then IAE and Invictus. And in terms of prioritizing what ones go, that's generally done at sort of a very high level. I think, like I say, we talk about this every year or so, but every show's someone's first show. So once or maybe twice a year, I sit down with Chris, Erin, Todd, Tony, and we look at the next 12 to 24 months schedule and go, oh, this feature is coming, so let's try and push for this ship there. Or we can't guarantee a ship is this feature is going to get done in this time frame, so let's put some ships in that don't have any pre-existing gameplay requirements, or even do new like straight to release ships that can help maintain that regular release cycle without taking away from other things. And that's also the reason why things move. Like we mentioned at the start, we don't do everything related to ships. So if another team, for whatever reason, can't deliver the feature on time, we're sort of left going, do we just stop working on the ship? For some ships, we can. It's easy enough to just pause them at a certain point, come back to it. Connie Taurus was a great example of what happened to a ship that got paused so many times because the people were needed for other things. Other times we get to the ending. Yeah, the whole series. Other times it's like, no, the ship is done and we're just waiting for the gameplay. Can we release it without this gameplay? The raft being a good example. We wanted it to be with the cargo refactor, so you could be dropping those crates on. Unfortunately, the planets didn't align for that, but it could still be used as a cargo ship. So we made the choice to release it with the existing cargo gameplay rather than hold it for the cargo refactor.
And it's not just the feature teams as well. Is even within this group, we've got 5 different people working on 5 different things. We still have like the concept teams, the VFX, the animation, the audio, the tech art. So there's enough. Like, we represent a rather large section of the company already within us, but that's just kind of half of the picture as well when you take into account like all the other kind of departments that work towards getting a ship out. And it only takes kind of 1 or 2 things that changes priorities there that can then impact what we're trying to do.
So we're going to get into some... Oh, wrong button there. All right. So we're going to get into some questions here. There were a lot of questions about reworks and updates. Hey, I should have muted my phone. There are a lot of questions about reworks and updates, so we're going to kind of group them all into one section here. Right off the bat, a lot of folks have been talking about or asking about a 600i rework, and they've seen, because of the public roadmap, that it's currently underway. What can you tell us about the 600i rework? What scope of work should folks be expecting?
So the 600i rework is actually one of the things I've been working on, and when John asked me to go through it, we were happy with the exterior. The exterior looks great, but the interior just didn't line up with what we wanted to deliver from a gameplay side. So the interiors had nigh on a complete internal rework with huge amounts of features added to the ship. So it's still currently going through its interior iterations rework, but to give an example, because obviously there's not been much information out there about what's been added, removed, etc. It's now got a medical bed, so it's got a similarity, a medical bed to the Carrack. It's got individual crew quarters. So, for example, before it had that giant open area where there's just 4 little beds, so it's now got private crew quarters for each person. and the touring and the exploration version both have very different features inside them. So with the exploration, you've got the medical bed, you've got a full-on armory now with places to put your suits, your weapons, and everything else, as well as a little bit more gameplay towards the exploration side, as well as a proper vehicle cargo hold to put much bigger vehicles and a lot more cargo in, as well as a much better flow through the ship. And then the touring has been completely flipped on its head to lean completely into luxury guest transport. A big change to it was where we did the modularity as well. So currently the modularity was the middle section, and that's been moved to the rear section to allow a lot more changes between the different versions. But it's not quite ready to show yet, which is why there hasn't been much talking about it. Like, we know people really want to know more about it, and obviously the stuff that I've just listed off means people are going to have even more questions, but we're not quite there yet, ready to show people. But it has docking collars, it has the external lifts, it has escape pods. It does have a lot of new additions, although the captain's quarters, with the exception of the bathroom, moving one side to the other, hasn't changed, because that was fine.
The captain's
one
quarters
bit.
were okay. I'm sorry, what did you say?
And I think I was going to say, I think it's on the note of that, and going back to like your original point about the roadmap, is although this rework is on the roadmap, the part of that rework that's on the roadmap is what Mark's talking about. It's doing the investigations, getting a plan together. It's not that ship is in production and we're about to drop it. It's we're doing the initial part of the investigation on what we want to do. It's we haven't got artists that are actively working on this.
If you
within
remember,
the
for folks who saw the Banner Merchantman stuff yesterday, Mark as a designer is working on layout, and where everything's going. But there's not a whole lot to it visually and stuff like that. When it goes into visual production, that's when it moves from Mark over to Ben's team, and that's where you'll begin to see the fruits of all this effort, almost certainly in an Inside Star Citizen, because that's what that show's for.
Oh, without a doubt, it looks you barely see anything when we've been working on it, but as soon as art get involved, that's when you actually see differences.
Yeah. What can you tell us about the Mole and the Prospector saddlebags? This question comes up a lot.
Yep, they're still planned to be as they were pitched. So detachable, compressible bags, and that is actually another good example of something that the vehicle team isn't actually working on. That's actually going to be EUPU, because they own mining, they own refining, so it's on them to deal with. They're essentially items that will be detached from the ship, moved to another ship, or a station or cargo or whatever, to do the refining and then pass back. We from a vehicle content side just simply make the assets in a way that they can detach and be compressed.
Okay. Let's talk about the Starfarer. Starfarer's going through a bit of a small renaissance at the moment. We interviewed Dan Truffin for Inside Star Citizen, and he mentioned that the Starfarer, which is long supposed to have had some refining capabilities, is also getting additional refining capabilities so that it can take fuel from other or take refined goods from other ships and refine that too. And those that requires some moderate rework of the Starfarer. Talk to us about what's happening to the Starfarer, and maybe a little bit about what we hope to do for the Starfarer in the future.
I think there's two things really to talk about. There's the work for supporting refining and refueling, which is what we're doing at the moment, and that doesn't really have any impacts on the interior, like the layout. It's all pretty much contained to either the bridge consoles at the rear of the bridge, the gantry at the back, and the sort of fuel pods. And then there's what we want to do with it to fix all the issues we have within the interior, the layout, and the flow, or the lack of flow in it. So we're actively working at the moment on the refining and refueling side of it. So you probably won't see it in 3.16, but you obviously see it alongside when refueling comes out. There's lots of changes there, and then we are going to start the process of, much like the 600i, looking at what we want to do with the interior of the Starfarer to sort that out.
Yeah, the Starfarer was, for folks who have followed the project for a while. The Starfarer was famously, developed and pushed forward as early as it was because it's used in Squadron 42. But as you build these ships each and every year, you guys learn and learn more about what it takes to develop a full 1-1 interior exterior ship. The lessons that your team has learned about good flow, proper player flow, and everything cannot be understated. You see the ships that come out today are, quite honestly, if I'm allowed to have an opinion, have a much better flow and better player experience inside them than the earlier ones. So I think I can say to folks that our desire to go back and redo the Starfarer interior is just as strong as those of the players. It's just a matter of finding the time and the resources on the schedule, because like you said before, having to balance that, you want a certain number of ships out every single quarter, every single year, and so if you went on a certain number of ships, that it would be the only thing you'd work on for some time. Then you have to balance that with the reworks and stuff. So it's not an enviable task, but I think folks can count on it getting done. Let's talk about gold standards. There's a lot of questions. There were a lot of questions about gold standards. We've seen talk of the Cutlass Black gold standard. We've seen a little bit of the Retaliator gold standard work. We've covered the Gladius gold standard in recent months. What ships are currently underway or have gold standard passes underway, and what should we expect from them?
So yeah, I mean the gold standard work is any of our release ships that we're working on all kind of get that incorporated in them, and a lot of it comes down to supporting features that have come online since that ship was released. That's probably the best way of kind of describing what gold standard is, really. It's it's going back in and adding and making sure that the items are interactive that should be interactive. It's going back and making sure that things adhere to metrics correctly. If we take the kind of Retaliator as an example, unfortunately some of the corridor spaces were just a little bit too small to allow our AI to navigate comfortably through it. So we had to just go in and massage things around a little bit. We try and be kind of quite delicate with our approach so that we're not changing the ships too much where possible. So for things like making corridors a little bit wider or moving items around to make them more accessible for players and AI, that's kind of relatively straightforward. Things that are a little bit more invasive, I guess, is things like adding big airlocks to the side of ships that didn't necessarily have airlocks in the right position, and that's something that we've kind of started doing on the Retaliator as well. We've taken it as far as doing all the interior changes. We just haven't got around to doing the exterior changes yet, and that's why it's kind of we haven't really seen much from it. But yeah, the main part is just making sure the interactions work, bringing it all up to kind of the experience level that we want, so dashboards and things like that work. And yeah, the item, I don't know, have I forgotten anything? One of the designers will jump in and tell me that I've probably forgotten something.
Components is the big thing.
Yeah,
it's also an opportunity for us to go back and change anything that we've decided needs to change as a result. As the game's evolved and progressed and new features and things have come online, the gold standard is the perfect opportunity for us to go in and correct things or improve things or just get things more where we want them to be. Something like the Saber one, for example, that there wasn't much needed to be changed for the interior point of view, but the 600i is on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's opportunity to completely change what we have learned from this experience. And the Starfarer will be very much a similar sort of situation where we can take everything we've learned and move it forward.
Okay. And it's kind of ever evolving as well. Because as new features come online, so a gold standard 2 years ago might not have had the refueling ports in it, or can't think of anything else. But yeah, as features come online, they get added to like the gold standard list of things to do. The screens, the door screens that have all the lighting controls, and they're all additional features that, as they come online, we're like, oh yeah, cool, let's add that to the gold standard list. And so yeah, we always joke about, oh, we've done gold standard, do we go on to platinum standard? Like, how far do we go? But it's just like that kind of like, I guess that ever moving line of what we want to, where we want the game to be.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably also worth, Ben touched on it briefly, that gold standard doesn't necessarily mean like full rework. Some ships will need that. Like the 600i is going to be, its gold standard will be pretty close to a full rework. I mean, the exterior shape isn't really going to change. The exterior visuals beyond like supporting docking colors and maybe any knock-ons from interior changes, but it's not like put it all in the bin, start again fresh. And then you have the other end of the scale, like Mark mentioned with the Saber, where pretty much the exterior work was just putting in the component hatches and doing a bit of material optimization. And it's everything in between that. There is no, we have a list of everything we want to do for gold standard, but that is not like a time boxed amount of time per ship to do it.
No.
It varies per ship.
Yeah, I think all in all, it's important that folks remember that a gold standard is not a guaranteed rework. It's essentially a review process of the ship to bring it up to whatever today's current Star Citizen standard is, as more, as you said, as more features, as stuff come online. Adding fuel ports is a great one. Going back to the ships and going, oh, all of these need fuel ports that we didn't know where to add or how, because we didn't know how refueling was going to work when we were building those ships. But now it's going back and adding those and stuff. So when folks see something like the Cutlass Black gold standard, that's not another full rework of the Cutlass. They shouldn't expect massive changes to the hull of the ship or anything like that.
Correct. It's the Cutlass one off the top of my head will be, again, making sure the components have space, adjusting the cockpit so it's less wall of screens and you're actually sat in it properly.
Okay. While we're before we move on from reworks and updates here, one of the questions from the thread was about how we saw the updated Vanduul ships for Squadron 42 a couple years ago on ATV. Why don't we have those versions of the ships in the Persistent Universe?
Because we're saving them for Squadron first is the very short answer. When Squadron ships, they will almost certainly find their way into the PU.
Okay. Let's talk about some combat and flight stuff, Yogi. Yogi's been sitting patiently. It's your time, man. It's your time.
Oh, I enjoy watching the show.
Right off the bat, will weapon ranges ever increase again based on weapon size?
Yes. So anything we have in the weapon stats for now is just temporary and normalized to aid us with the general combat framework, so to speak. But we will add a lot of differences. And actually, the size 5 and plus, size 5 plus weapons, they actually have a longer range already. But there will be more difference between the weapons, also between energy weapons and ballistic weapons. So yeah, that's all ongoing, just not ready to be submitted yet.
Okay. I know we talked about how the cargo refactor is another team, but will the upcoming cargo refactor affect a ship's mass and in turn ship handling? There were a couple questions in the thread about, because we simulate that mass and stuff, is this refactor going to massively change the way that ships handle?
Long term, it's supposed to affect that. So, for example, if you transport if you have a cargo hold full of weight equipment or something like that, then your ship is supposed to handle more less agile. But I'm not sure where the tech for that is. So the cargo work as such, I'm not sure if it has an effect on the physical properties yet. Somebody else would need to check that.
I don't know. It would be for the team doing cargo to confirm that, but I know from the IFCS side, obviously, if you put more mass on the ship, it will behave correctly with the extra weight. It's just the current cargo system just doesn't do that at all. If it did, then you would have that behavior already.
Yeah.
Okay.
So currently the mass is just not propagated to the outside of the ship. It's just the layer doesn't communicate with it yet.
All right. Are you planning to increase ammunition or add extra magazines for ballistics?
Okay, so yes. So there's two things here. So we want to have some ballistics ammo management and supporting things like that. Bigger ships can just use bigger ammo boxes. Right now we can't do that, and because of that we had to restrict the weapon loadouts in the or the ammo capacities in a lot of the Gatling guns and the cannons. That is. And this was more for balance reasons. And this is not the way how it's supposed to be. What we actually want to do is to tie the ballistics gameplay closely to the physical armor gameplay. And once that physicalized armor gameplay is done, then we can reevaluate the ballistic counts again. That said, at the moment, the ballistic counts is related to what kind of purpose the weapon has. And if the purpose of the weapon is to attack larger ships, it has more ammo. So for example, the Baring Gatling series has a lot more ammo than the other Gatlings. But also that's all work in progress. That will change over time.
Okay. Have you found your different role for auto gimbal yet? This is, I think, was referring to our IC segment we did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think so. We haven't tried it out yet. So we sketched out what we want to do, but we didn't have time for prototyping and testing it internally yet. But let's hope we'll approach that early next year, hopefully.
Okay. We got a raft question here. Why does the Argo raft only have 3 containers when it looks like it could fit several more?
So when the RAF was actually going through its early concept and design stages, we went through a load of different iterations for what we wanted to do with the cargo, ranging from it being one huge giant pod that you put cargo inside, like the Thunderbird style, where you could put a vehicle in, drive out, or whatever. Putting loads of different ones on, but in the end, we ended up settling on the 3 cargo pods, and there's a couple of different reasons there. First one being that it's nice, quick, and easy to pick up a pod, move away without any risk of accidentally hitting your other cargo containers. Another one is it is an early starter long-haul vessel, and when we tried to jam more in there, it just started looking cramped and cramped and cramped, and the mechanisms started looking more flimsy and flimsy and flimsy. And when you're actually going to be escaping from pirates at some point, you want to quickly be able to drop your pod and run, because the reality is the pirate wants your goods, not you. So if you leave your pod behind and then fly off, probably just going to let you get away, which, considering you don't have a lot of weapons, sounds like a good deal to me.
Right. John, let's jump into some higher level stuff, so some broader features. There are a number of things that we've talked about over the years, big sweeping apocalyptic changes to
say
ships
that word.
and whatnot. Just features that should absolutely kill every character. Let's go ahead and ask them about that. I was going to get Mark with that one. Where is player facing modularity? We've been hearing about this thing for quite some time. And what can you tell us, if anything, about this system?
So it is still planned. No, I say this every time that people ask me. It's still planned. It's not something that we want to get rid of or just not doing it and hoping people forget it exists, which is what I see a lot on Spectrum. It's the big thing is it's there's a core tech blocker on it, which is item port system needs to work within object containers, which it does at the moment. Like ships have, or stations have, item ports inside them. The problem it has at the moment is object containers assume some sort of level of, they are static, they're not dynamic. Object containers themselves can't move, and they really don't like being deleted and undeleted at runtime. And the item port system within those would have to dynamically attach and detach. So we use the Retaliator as the really good example for this. And when we have this in, it will be the first ship that gets the modularity in game. The Retaliator bomber modules need the item ports for the torpedoes to be placed within the object containers, which the object container itself will be in an item attached to the ship. And we need the game to be able to read those detached and undetached events and link all the power and missile controllers to the items within those object containers. Because at the moment, those torpedo items are actually part of the exterior ship CGA to make them work. So whilst we could do the modularity right now, you would never be able to get rid of those torpedoes in the ship. So you would swap out the room and have the drop seat room, be able to swap it in. Could do that right now. You just have these 4 size 9 torpedoes shoved in the room at the same time as well. So what we're waiting on is the vehicle tech team to work on that dynamic detach and retaching of item ports in object containers in items attached to ships. It's just a horrible nesting problem. And when we have that, the world's our oyster. We can. That's the only thing stopping us from rolling it out.
And
So
that's going to. Sorry, I was going to say that's going to bring us lots of options to, rather than every new feature requiring an entire new ship, it's going to allow us to kind of, support the features, but still be able to spend the time making the ships that everyone wants us to make, and not just kind of being kind of bottlenecked by, okay, well, we need to do this particular feature support, so it has to be a new ship. It just opens up loads and loads of new options, which is super cool because, at the end of the day, our ships some of our ships are quite large, and they could definitely benefit from having some kind of, more variation to them in their functionality. So.
I mean, personally, I'm really looking forward to being able to actually go back and do the modular containers for the Carrack, to actually go a bit further with them. But like John's saying at the moment, if we were to do them, the problem would be you'd still have whatever module was in the place of the cargo holds, yet the cargo hold would be there, and then the item ports inside them would be there, and it would just layer on top of each other again and again and again.
Is this the same stuff that would allow us to do all the animations on like the items within the ships as well?
To some extent, yeah. So the Avenger is, although the Avengers, I can never remember if they were officially true variants or modules.
Some were variants and some were modules.
Yeah. It would allow us to have that be done properly rather than all being like hard-baked variants.
No, so basically, it sounds like it's something we know what's necessary. We know what's involved in making it happen. It's just it requires a pretty sizable chunk of time and resources in order.
Yeah,
to do it.
it's a lot of low-level engineering people, and the people that are best suited to doing it are unfortunately the people that are looking at server meshing, because they're ironically the people that made the object containers and a lot of the original pipe system code.
Yeah. All right, let's go to another easy one. Physicalized damage. Where, John? Where?
It's being worked on by the physics team at the moment. I saw a cool little video the last few weeks. So they are prototyping all the different aspects of it. So they've got a little like soft body deformation tests on vehicles, which is equal parts looking really cool and terrifying to me from the content side. And this week, in fact, we were looking at replacing the hit point based part detachments with material based and tensile strength detachments. So rather than you just depleting the parts of the wing down to 0 health and they fall off, it's you hitting it and the tensile strength of the joint is reduced to the point that it would break off naturally.
All right.
So it's been worked on. There's a lot of things there, and we're at the point where we've got all these prototypes. It's merging them together and then looking at that versus our current pipeline and going, right, what's the best way to merge these two things together? Because obviously we build ships in a certain way at the moment, and not all of that is going to be 100% usable out the box with physical damage.
Making me scared.
Yeah.
It's a big change, but it's absolutely central to so much of what Star Citizen wants and it wants to be. So I mean, it'll happen.
There's some of it actually in the engine already, but just disabled. So there's a CVAR that we can flip that correctly generates the mass based off the material applied to the ship, which is sort of a lot of physical based damage is going to be based off the material types and surface types attached to the ships. So at the moment, design just go, this ship weighs 87 tons, and the physics engine goes, right, I'm going to work out the volume of each part. Here's the overall volume. This overall volume weighs 87 tons. I'm going to split it equally between it. But it has no knowledge of what the part is. Like if you have a ship with like what looks like a carbon fiber wing versus a solid iron wing, the engine at the moment goes, they weigh the same. Unless a designer goes in and specifically says, like, this one only weighs 100 kilograms, this one weighs a ton. Which obviously we don't want to do per part on every single ship in the game. That's not fun for a designer. So the new system looks at the material type. So when Art are making the ship, they go, this wing is made of metal. So when you shoot it,
you're shifting it off of design
down
that chain onto Art.
He's realised.
Yeah,
I mean, that sounds like a fantastic idea to me, John. Let's go with that.
Everything's going to be made of metal dents. It's fine.
Please send all bugs to the Art team.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a CVAR in the game that we can flip, and then the ships look at the volume of the parts, the material applied to them, and then works out the correct mass.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to go all the way with that, John. I was like, he's going to put this on the Art team with the materials pass.
On the record.
Sorry, Ben. You want to go back to props?
Don't we have? You normally do some sort of like caveating at the beginning, Jared. That's like, everything's subject to change. Like,
no, this one's going to land on the Art team.
Brilliant.
I will actually say that the two ships we tried it on, there was actually very little change in the mass because they were correctly set up.
Good.
All I can do for you, Ben, is I can keep hitting John with the hard ones. John, talk to me about AI blades. We already put NPC crews off on AI team, but what about the blade components?
Unfortunately, I can't quite shift that one off. So AI blades is tied in with ship computers, or avionics as they were called. People still call them avionics, and I think we only changed the name to be computers because ground vehicles don't really have avionics, but they have computers. But that is on Vehicle Experience in their long-term roadmap. Someone's just rung the doorbell in the middle of this. And that is making the computer item itself, which hosts the blades and makes the CPU resource for blades to use. And then blades will still be as we planned. They add in or modify functionality to vehicle systems.
Nope, I hear dog. Oh, wrong button.
Tactical muting.
All right, let's do one more big. Several years ago, and I think it was one of our anniversary videos. I think it was 2016, if I remember correctly. We showed off a video with Nate Dearsley demonstrating a hex code paint editor, a tool that was originally designed internally for artists on the ship team in order to help, color and paint stuff. But it was said during the thing that this would be a great tool to give to org leaders and stuff. They could give out their hex codes to their players and all have a unified paint scheme and stuff like this. We have not talked about this for a while, and in the interim, we have now introduced paints that are for sale on the website. We have talked about the auto body shops that we're adding into the game, where you'll be able to take your ship and have it, custom painted there. Let's take this opportunity to talk about what our goals for ship paints are at present, whether they've changed in the last 5 years. The floor is yours. Where are we moving towards here? Because it
I
seems like
mean,
we're going in a couple different directions at once.
if I'm inheriting physical damage and materials, John can answer this question.
Time to delegate back to Ben. No, it's still planned. We still want to let players paint their ships in game. There will be physical locations in the universe where you have to fly to and get your ships or vehicles painted. We do want to let players pick their colors, but we're still working out how far we go. We still want there to be some exclusivity and benefits to having these pre-made paints. Whether that is, we don't really want to lock off specific colors. That gets very messy very quickly. But maybe specific finishes or stencil patterns, they're exclusive to paints that you get rather than create yourself.
Okay. So the idea itself is not dead.
It was never dead.
Okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely something we still want to be able to support and give players the freedom to make their ships more their ships. I think at the moment, we do, we do produce a fair number of tints each year and each quarter. The system is still very much in its infancy as to where we'd like it to be, or personally where I'd like it to be. There's still a lot we can do to just add more variation. We're making an entire universe, so not all ships should be like grey and black. I mean, I'm a big fan of black. I love black, but I'll get in trouble for making every tint black. I think we, like I say, we don't want to be like, oh, we've made a blue and gold tint. Let's reserve that so that only people that have bought it can make blue and gold tints. There's got to be more to it than that. We just haven't kind of invested the time into producing that system that's going to be really accessible for the players to be able to do what they need to do. But it's not off the cards. We were quizzing Chris about it this week. I was on holiday last week and saw it blew up on Reddit, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't even. What is this video? Oh, okay, and yeah.
Yeah, like Ben says, it's something we definitely want to do, and the tools we have internally are really where we want them to be. They're not quite giving us what we want. So the last thing we want to do is work on a in-game player-facing version of a tool we're not happy with, and just let people suffer that and then have to change it all down the line. We want to be happy with what we've got first, and then we'll work on the player-facing side of it. So the flow will be, like I said, you'll go to somewhere like Cousin Crow's and you'll go to a terminal and you'll purchase your respray job for however many UEC, and then whether it will be hex codes or RGB values or sliders or picking swatches, we don't know yet, but you'll be doing that and going like primary this, secondary that, tertiary that.
And yeah, one of the things is you can look at a lot of competitive other games that allow kind of this sort of customization to their vehicles. The thing that I struggle to get my head around sometimes is just the sheer scale of what we're doing, and by that I mean, it's very easy to develop a system that works on much smaller ships, but then when you've got ships that they range from tens of meters up to kilometers, it's you need a system that's going to be flexible enough, or we need to make rules and put rules in place that actually, these smaller ships will allow a certain level of customization versus these massive, great big ones that might not. I know a classic guy at the front of Red Dwarf, right, painting the letters on the side of his ship at the start of every episode.
Yeah, another good point related to that as well is not all the ships are set up to take paints at the moment, so we want to make sure that all ships are equal in terms of painting, because the last thing you want is, I've got a Argo MPUV and I've flown all this way to a paint shop to find out I can't paint my ship. Or if I paint my ship, what I picked red on here is sort of a weird pinky color because there was something wrong with the base material. We need to make sure all the ships can do it all at the same time, and it all applies equally, because as we've been doing these paints and tints for various events, we found like, this looks really cool on these three ships, but the fourth one, for some reason, looks terrible, and then we've had to go back in and reassign materials and do lots of fun things just to get it to behave how we want. So we need that in place across the board for them all before we can even consider the player side of it.
I didn't see the name, but someone just put something in the chat about de-orangifying the interior of their raft, and that's something that, again, like, we need to spend time investigating that sort of stuff. Like, from my point of view, I would absolutely love to be able to kind of have control over the interior of my ship, and just like I say, make it all dark greys and moody. But it's something we're not able to do right now. I don't know, John, you need to get some magic tech people to sprinkle the magic dust on interior OCs and brushes and everything else.
Like I say, that's another thing we want to do, is like customizing interiors. We tried it in a very obtuse way with the 300 series, letting you customize the interior, when in fact that is actually you're just customizing the dashboard, and it changes trims in the back because they're part of the dashboard. So we can do it. It's not a great way to do it, and it absolutely doesn't scale across larger ships.
And we've tried it like internally with using our tint system within our editor, but all it does is it just gives us another version of everything, like the entire ship, and it's not able to kind of do that in the client and in game. So we can prototype this stuff, but we don't have an ability to actually put that in the live product, which is a shame, because I think it was the Star Lifter we were playing with, and we started making the different variants, and it was like, oh, this looks really cool in dark gray on the inside, but it just doubles up the entire, everything we need for the ship gets doubled, and that does not scale when we're trying to do hundreds and thousands of ships. It's just never going to happen, unfortunately.
The dark gray.
Give us something good and give us something happy to talk about, Jared. You're making me upset.
Development. It's where you try things, and not everything works. Let's just put it that way. Something happy. Okay. Is racing dead?
Better not be. Want some more racing ships?
No. Pretty much everything we did for the flight model, and also the upcoming stuff with the high speed changes and so on. This will have an effect on racing. So no, it's not that. It's, I mean, specifically for Rich, he was not here today, but he loves racing. It's really, really important for him. So he'll make sure that it won't die, right? So no, it's not that for us.
Okay. Let's see, what else have I got? What else have I got here for the group here? Looking through the chat, can you give us a list of the various operator modes that you intend to add? We've added a couple operator modes recently.
So operator modes in general are very useful for us, because they allow us to focus on a new or on a specific feature, and also for controllers or input purposes, it kind of cuts down the amount of keys we need. So we will expand the lists when we see the need for it. I mean, we split out basically let's say the guns operator modes from the missile operator modes, and the things we have planned for the future is at least EMP and QED. So you get different separate operators for that. In my list also salvage appears, but we're not doing that, or at least not in BET. But basically any kind of other operator mode. So for new features, it's just really good to use operator modes, because it makes a lot of things easier for us.
Okay. Let's see. We don't have a whole lot of time left. We might be able to go a couple minutes over, but let's see if we can do like a speed round here. Get a bunch more of these questions in. Any update on the armored cockpit for the Carrack?
We were actually talking about that this week.
Really?
Ironically, yeah.
And
it's something that we're fairly confident we can do now. We didn't do it at release because we just didn't have the tech to do it, but because of the work needed for the whole sea, and it's like animated states controlled from the ship and controlling animated items on ships, it's doable in theory. We just need to grab out the asset and actually have a go at it.
okay.
But like everything else, it's time. By doing that, it's a designer not doing something else. In this
But
case,
it looks really cool,
building-
Mark.
It does look. I'm not gonna lie. It does.
Just
look
start
really,
watching
really
Cowboy
cool.
Bebop and those shutters. Come on.
All right, windshield wipers. That's all that question is. Windshield wipers? Question mark.
Very next.
What?
Yeah. Not sure windshield right. Did the space shuttle have windscreen? Oh, I suppose it went belly in, didn't it? So
Yeah.
it didn't go face first through atmospheres. I think 900 years in the future, we perhaps would have evolved past it and had space Rain-X.
Remember those really posh beamers from the 80s that used to have like the little squirters that used to pop out the front and squirt water up onto your headlights and then little windscreen wipers? We're gonna get windscreen wipers. We need them on the lights as well.
There is definitely bugs with the current canopy effects at the moment that we are looking at. Something changed, and it's had wildly inconsistent results across all the ships that used to work. So some of them, the water and slush is the wrong size, or it's going the wrong way, or it's not appearing at all. So if you're offended at the moment by the amount of water and slush going across your canopy, it's probably not intended to be like that.
Yeah, and for once, it's not just artists ramping up the wear to make it feel more real. It's
Get the
or at
Brillo
least I
pads
don't
out and scratching.
Yeah, I don't think it is anyway. If there is, we'll find them.
Any love for the Saber Raven?
The Saber Raven's actually my favorite ship in the game for its visual appearance. I love that thing. Whenever we're doing the playtests, that's what I do if I'm flying solo. If I'm not taking passengers with me, that's the ship I go to and use. I know it didn't get the same love as the base Saber with the gold standard rework, and like a lot of people, they didn't understand why the Saber got the fix, like all the new stuff and all the new shiny stuff, but the Raven didn't. It's just because it was a separate model to work on. It wouldn't just be as you do one work, the other one gets done. Like some variants, it's straight up an entirely separate model, so it would have been double the time to do the gold standard. So it was just, it didn't get done in time. That's all. It's not forgotten. I say I love the way that ship looks. Yeah.
Right. Can we please separate the ship's wing animations from the landing mode?
John, can we please separate that, please?
Same answer as what we talked about for the Carrack. That is theoretically possible now. We just need to actually go and do it. I'm not going to say what ship it is, but there's one in production where it's going to get trialed on.
Okay. Ship and ship spawning.
Not really us. All I can say is it's definitely going to be a thing, and to start with, you'll be doing it from the ASOP terminal. So you go pick your constellation and then pick whether, if you have a Merlin or Archimedes, pick which one you want in there.
Gotcha. So probably on USP then.
Yeah.
All right. In a previous Q&A, it was mentioned that that the Mercury Star Runner is missing a second entrance and egress. It was overlooked. Has there been any progress in adding that in?
No.
Okay. Still on the
It's the
still on
first
docket,
straight
though.
no.
First straight no. Okay. And then let's see. What do we? Wrong buttons here. All right. Let's see. What Any updates on escape pods or ejection seats with parachutes? Anything at all? Tumbleweeds?
I keep bugging Rich Tyra about parachutes or jetpack fall arrest systems, because it's really annoying that if you have to eject, you might as well just stayed in your ship and died anyway, because you're probably going to die from hitting the floor. So
I mean, we can settle for ejecting and then little engine and extra wings. Oh, sorry. That'd be like good enough for now, right?
Yeah.
mini spaceships.
All right, and then we'll get time for two more questions. So for this, our second to last one, I'd like to just talk about, go back at the beginning of the show, we talked about ships that were currently in active development. Easily our number one most asked ship. Like if you take all the questions about where is this ship or where is that ship, where is that ship, it was easily our most asked stuff. So I just want to kind of touch upon a couple of things. But before I do that, saying, folks, check out the public roadmap. The public roadmap is always your best resource for determining which ships are currently in active development. And if you don't see it anywhere in the public roadmap, it's probably not in active development. That said, anything you can tell us about the Polaris?
What's a Polaris?
The Polaris had its full interior concept work done. Like we figured out the full layout. It's all there. It's all ready. We figured out the metrics for everything, what needs to go in. There's been some changes to the actual Polaris's loadout, but I'm not going to say more because once again, we're not ready to show it right now. But there's been some updates to bring it up to scratch with everything else, similar to when the Merchantman had its revisit when we brought it up to the standards that it is now. But I don't think now is the time to actually go into detail about it. But it's had some significant changes to bring it up to where it needs to be. I mean, as far as the concept goes, if I remember correctly, it's ready for development when we can find a slot, if I remember right.
Pretty much, yeah. I think one big-ish thing to talk about on it was the original concept for it. The hangar was sort of not quite to any of the hangar metrics, and now it is. So much like the Odyssey, it has a proper 2-metric hangar, so it can fit a much larger range of ships in there rather than as much fun as it was watching everyone on Reddit and Spectrum getting Photoshop out and deciding what ships can fit in there. It is a proper size now, so it should remove that, and that naturally got a little bigger. We always make things bigger, but it's not gigantic.
Okay.
I mean, when it comes to sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
When it comes to things getting bigger, I mean, I suppose I could say that it does have its a capital shield generator in it now, because I mean, it did get some component increases as well, because that's one people are probably very curious about with it. So it has had its power plant, cooler, and shield generator bumped up to capital level.
And when it does go into active development, which is we assign 3D artists to actually start building it, that's when we'll begin to showcase it on Inside Star Citizen. You'll start to see some of this reconcepting work and all that stuff like that. So again, it's had some recent work reconcepting, but it is still not in active development. So there won't be any new updates to give you until that time comes. So it crosses that line that the Banner Merchantman just crossed. The Corsair. What can you tell us about the Corsair? Remember, we're out of time here, so
we're looking at it. We're white boxing, pre-production. We've got some people digging into it this week and next week.
Okay, so it has actually started.
Yeah, unless John shouts me for saying that, but yeah.
No,
we've basically
we're literally this week.
Yeah, we've just started rolling onto it, so it will. I mean, I'm not sure when we'll first start showing it. It's like I say, very early days, but yeah, we're on it.
Yep. And then, of course, the Merchantman recently just began its white box. We showcased the first images off of last week. Other shows, or other ships that folks have asking about: the Perseus, the Apollo, the Kraken, the Ranger, the Endeavor, the Genesis. That was probably me asking. Those are ships that are not in active development yet, so there are no updates to give. Finally, just one last question before we let you go, John Crew. Why does John Crew look like he wants to die anytime someone mentions the Endeavor?
I know exactly who asked this because I saw it in the thread. I don't know. It's just something about that ship. Maybe it's the space farming ship that gets to me, or the absolute headache I know is going to hit us for because it was before my time at the company. The absolute headache we're going to have with the modularity on it.
This is a good chance to remind folks, especially in lieu of Carrot Killer and everything, that at Star Citizen we do things a little differently in our stuff. If you haven't noticed watching my stuff for the last 7 years now, our fine and wonderful devs are not trained marketing professionals. They get to speak their mind here. They get to share their personal opinions about things. I get to say that I don't like the Carrack. I've never liked the Carrack, but a lot of people do. John cannot be super excited about the Endeavor. Paul can think that the Odyssey is a carrot killer. These are personal opinions by the people who are working on these ships, and we are very grateful that we get the opportunity to share the personal opinions of our developers. We want you to know who we are. We want you to know what we honestly think about this stuff. And sometimes that can get mixed up when people are used to seeing bland and sanitized marketing crap from everybody else out there in the industry. So I would just encourage folks to remember that that's not who we are. We tell you what we think personally about our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own views on things, and we think that's important because that's frankly, it's who we've been since this project started back in 2012, going all the way back to the Wingman's Hangar days. That was started before John. It was started before me, and I'm proud to carry that torch today. So just always remember that, when we're talking for ourselves. That's one of the things that sets us apart. So for Ben, for Mark, for Yogi, for Chris, excellent job today, Chris. You held it down, man.
Yeah, no worries. I can be silent for an hour.
And John Crew, I'm Jared Huckabee. I'll see you next week, everybody. Take care. Bye.